She reached up to the sky of stars and caught the red-hot light of the North Star.
Greetings, and as always, welcome back. The Washington Post reports Trump tries to wrest spending power from Congress as the government shutdown looms. The administration says it can cancel nearly $5 billion in international aid with or without approval from Congress under a little tested theory called a pocket rescission. Also, U.S. News reports Trump signs order to end collective bargaining with some federal unions. Yesterday, he signed an executive order to end collective bargaining with federal unions in some agencies that have, quote, national security missions, end quote. The order would apply to unions in agencies such as NASA, the Patent and Trademark Office, the National Weather Service, and others. Interesting about this, the unions that backed him as a candidate are not being challenged. Sounds like retribution to me. Is the U.S. heading in a post-constitutional direction? Let's connect some dots and find out.
Connecting the Dots with Dr. Wilmer Leon, where the analysis of politics, culture, and history converge.
Welcome to the Connecting the Dots podcast with Dr. Wilmer Leon, and I am Wilmer Leon. With each show, my guests and I provide insight and analysis into current events and the broader historical context in which most of these events take place. I want to get just to one headline, and then we'll get right to my guest. Israeli Finance Minister Bezalel Smotrich yesterday proposed the systematic annexation of Gaza over the coming months if Hamas keeps fighting, as well as the implementation of Trump's plan to ethnically cleanse the Palestinian enclave. Smotrich, who leads the far-right religious so-called Zionism party, announced his plan to, quote, win in Gaza by the end of the year, end quote. He said that they must completely hold control of the entire strip forever, he said. The minister explained that, quote, an ultimatum will be presented to Hamas during providing two options: surrendering, disarming, and returning all hostages kidnapped during the October 7th attack, or gradual annexation of areas of the Gaza Strip and reduction of Hamas's territory, and the implementation of the Trump plan for voluntary immigration of the Strip's residents. I don't know how one could figure that these are two ultimatums. They sound like variations on the same theme. And when we know that the Zionist government of Israel's ultimate plan is to ethnically cleanse Palestinians, again, variations on the same theme, hence genocide. On today's episode, the issue before us is, are we heading in a post-constitutional America? And if so, what does that mean? My guest is a Du Boisian scholar and founder of the Saturday Free School for Philosophy and Black Liberation, Dr. Anthony Monteiro. As always, my brother, welcome back.
Thank you very, very much, Wilmer. It's great to be with you, and there's a lot to talk about.
And let me again just hit on these two stories from today, which I think are additional data points or additional dots for us to connect as we unpack this whole issue. Trump says that he's going to cancel nearly $5 billion in congressionally approved funding for U.S. international assistance and diplomacy, setting up a fresh confrontation in the White House's attempt to wrest constitutional spending power away from lawmakers. The Republican chair of the Senate Appropriations Committee said today this is an attempt by the president to undermine the law. And another data point, just ahead of Labor Day weekend, Trump escalates his attack on the federal workforce by trying to strip union rights from more federal employees. He signed an executive order yesterday purporting to strip collective bargaining abilities from workers at the National Weather Service, the National Aeronautics and Space Administration, also known as NASA, and other federal agencies, claiming a national security exemption. But the interesting thing is, any of the federal unions that supported him have not been touched. Let's just start, Tony, this whole idea of a post-constitutional America. What does that mean to you?
Well, what does it mean to me? First of all, let me try to tell you what I make of Trump's behavior in the two instances that you mentioned, with the federal workers unions and with his attempting to overturn the spending appropriated by the House and the Senate, or what we might say about the whole Trump presidency up to this point. What we call this is an attempt at elite capture of the state, to capture the state in order to reverse the meaning of law, of the Constitution, of normalcy in the way the government works. This is, at the end of the day, a serious struggle at the level of elites, which is not merely a question of what they do, but what they believe and how they put their beliefs into practice. As far as the Constitution is concerned, what this new kind of, and I put quotes, revolutionary libertarianism is saying is that since the progressive era, or a little bit after, maybe the presidency of Woodrow Wilson, the government and the elites have misconstrued the meaning of the Constitution. Now, what do we mean by that? Their concept, that is, these libertarians, and there are a whole slew of them, they're not, by the way, they separate themselves from traditional conservatism and from traditional Republicans. But what they are saying is that the way the Constitution and the laws of the country have been used and interpreted, the fundamental assumption that of what man is, how do you constitute man, or how do you define man, and where are the assumptions of natural law that should guide the Constitution, where is that now in the ways that we understand and interpret what is legal, what is custom, and the way things should be done? Maybe we can come back to that. But this is a very profound ideological struggle. I would say at this point, the so-called revolutionary libertarians are not, have not won. They're making a strong move to capture the state. Will they? That is still up in the air. I think the hand that they're playing is weak, although they act like they have the upper hand in this battle. I don't think they do. I think this is going to be a long struggle. But the question for us, once we acknowledge that this is an attempt at elite capture of the state, where do the people fall into this, and where do we go from here? Do we go back to traditional, and I would say Democratic Party liberalism, or is there a way forward in the throes of the chaos and so on that will emerge from this struggle?
You know, I have been saying for a very long time that folks really needed to pay attention to Steve Bannon back in 2016 when he, during a Frontline interview, was talking about the objective of the administration would be the deconstruction of the administrative state. That did not, as soon as I heard him say that, that told me everything I needed to know about what they were trying to do. The question that I didn't have, the answer that I didn't have at the time was, how are they planning to go about doing it? So when you read or listen to Russell Vought, for example, and we look at what Trump is doing, and again, I just talked about wresting spending power from Congress. That's constitutionally mandated. That's part of what Congress, that's what makes part of what makes Congress Congress. So this seems to be the fulfillment of the prophecy that they articulated back in 2016.
Well, yeah, I hear what you're saying. The dismantling of the administrative state, as I've just said, it is the capture of the state, right, in order to use the state to reconfigure society as a whole. I'm not so, I don't so agree with taking what they say as the final statement of what they're trying to do and the philosophical underpinnings of what they're trying to do. I know that Steve Bannon has spoken.
No, so then what's the difference between what they're saying they want to do and what it is they're doing?
Well, first of all, the idea of capturing the state, of taking the state from those who have, or as they would have it, have commanded the state for over 100 years now, as Russell Vought says, going back to the Woodrow Wilson administration. So what Steve Bannon said may have had, stated intention, but I think we have to look deeper at what is driving this, especially if we talk about a post-constitutional thing or post-constitutional America, or a new way to understand the Constitution, and as they say it, to understand the founders' intention in writing the Constitution. Now, there's a lot involved here. There's a lot philosophically involved. There's a lot ideologically involved. There are political, tactical ways that they will attempt to bring that about. Now, so therefore, I have been, following a lot of these libertarians. Among them, I would include Bannon, but also people like Tucker Carlson and many, many others who are lesser known. But what comes out at the end of the day is that they wish to return to the founding fathers and this idea of natural law and the combining an understanding of the Constitution with the concept of natural law. They feel that society over the last 100 and so years has been run, and the state has been run by people who have violated the founders, the writers of the Constitution, their notion of natural law, of what is the human being and how does the Constitution of the United States in its original form reflect natural law and the understanding of what the human being in nature is or under natural law. They think that the brilliance of the American Constitution in its original form is that it parallels natural law. There's a lot involved here. To make it simple, what they are saying is that the nation was founded as a white nation. That once you get away from that, you have violated the intent of the writers or the founding fathers of the American nation and of the Constitution. And this is where they're facing a big problem. But if I could just say one other thing, the Steve Bannons, the Russell Voughts, all of these people, it is something of a panic in their whole approach. By the way, I don't consider any of these people to be serious intellectuals. And if you ask me, I'll show you why I don't. But there's a sense of panic that white people are losing not only in this country, but in the world. That a new world order is emerging. And it is not coming from white people, it's coming from the darker races of the world. Peter Thiel, the Silicon Valley billionaire, has said that the United States entered a period of stagnation in 1968. I read that to say that white people or white Americans had lost their strength to create, to innovate. Well, it's a very interesting thing, 1969, although he links it to the Woodstock concert and the putting a man on the moon. The fact of the matter is 1969 is a year after the assassination of Martin Luther King. 1969 was maybe the end point of the first stage of the civil rights movement, where the nation, as led by Martin Luther King, especially Black folk, was saying that to really give substance to the civil rights acts that had been passed, there had to be literally an economic revolution. The substance of law had to be fulfilled. A new democracy had to be realized. And as quiet as it's kept, in some ways, I think we have come close to that. There's been a setback to that. But what these thinkers, the Bannons, the Tucker Carlsons, the Scott Horton, people such as this are saying is that in undermining or reducing the state, we have to retreat from war. But retreat from war in order to reconfigure the state in order to once again establish the supremacy and hegemony of white people in the face of a nation that has changed in demographic terms, is not so white as it used to be, at least when it was founded. This is a nation that fought a bloody civil war to end slavery. So I think there's a panic here. I think they are losing globally. This is huge. And so can they win this one? Trump has what, 3 more years? And I don't think he's very well. At least he is unstable and unreliable politically. And he is a performer, and he is not performing all that well if you look at his poll numbers. Most people would think that a lot of what he's doing is ludicrous and without a direction.
One of the triggers that jumped out at me was the discussion of returning to the original Constitution.
Right.
Because, and again, this might have gone past a lot of folks, the original Constitution doesn't have a Bill of Rights.
Yeah.
The Bill of Rights were the first 10 amendments to the Constitution. The original Constitution had a 3/5 compromise. The original Constitution allowed for the importation of Africans for 20 years or 25 years after the Constitution was ratified. So that's either code language or not so coded language in terms of when they talk about the original Constitution. In fact, Ken McGee here says they're saying retreat from some wars, but others they are glad to see continue. Interesting. I think he's referring to particularly conflict on the continent with African countries. They seem to be retreating from European wars, but they don't seem to have a problem backing conflict on the continent.
Well, when you say they, you have to talk about who you're talking about. If you take a guy like Scott Horton, he's pretty much against all wars. If you take Tucker Carlson, because they say that war makes imperative a large state. A warfare state is an anti-democratic state. There is, this correlation between what they call the administrative state and war. So to get back to the original intent of the founders and the original Constitution, even with the first 10 amendments, the Bill of Rights, you have to retreat from war. Wars have been, it's quite interesting. War has contributed to this out of control state. Now, is that what, for example, Russell Vought believes? Well, it's hard to say. But in this collection of political activists and intellectuals and lawyers and theorists, there are differences. I think that it reflects a kind of malaise among those on that side or in the MAGA movement, the intellectuals of the MAGA movement. But it also reflects a lack of a deep thinking on their parts. So, yeah.
You know, you mentioned some of the problem that lies before Trump in that his numbers are so poor.
Yeah.
But the problem is to that, where's the opposition?
Yeah.
Because the Democrats' numbers are worse than his.
Yeah. Yeah.
So for as bad as and one of the assumptions was early in the game, at least by the Democrats, the assumption was, well, we don't have to say anything because he's doing so bad that those Republicans that are angry with him will defect to the Democrats. They were wrong from the get-go on that one. But I think that is a really large fallacy in their logic, as evidenced by the numbers as we see them now.
Well, but what do the numbers tell us? That the people have delegitimized, do not trust the political class. They don't trust the government. Trump is underwater. Well, of course, the Democrats are under more water, which makes it possible for Trump to have these quick and immediate tactical victories, or maybe not even tactical victories, more like PR and television victories, propaganda victories. He says a lot of things, but he is unable to deliver on hardly anything. We just don't know at this point what the opposition will look like going forward. We do know this. If you break down the numbers in terms of generations, the Democrats and Republicans have lost the younger generation, 18 to 40, gone, never to come back to either party. They are looking for outsiders like a Mamdani or others.
Right.
New York is indication of something. The other thing is that no side, the Trump MAGA people or the Democrats, have an ideological or philosophical position that could win the people, especially the younger generation. And this is very important because I believe that at the center of what we will have to fight going forward is the battle of ideas, which means that you can't take the Bannons or the Russell Voughts or any of these people, the Trumps, by the way, at face value. They can be defeated. I'm of the opinion that they face such forces globally and domestically. They have lost the people, the state, the government has lost the people. And they don't know how to get them back. Now, all this Russell Vought or whatever, talking about the original Constitution or the Claremont Institute, I don't even know what that is. Doesn't seem to be made up of too many very intelligent people. Going back to a white nation, going back as this young guy, Christopher Rofo, says, civil rights for white people, which is a return to the 1896 Supreme Court decision in Plessy v. Ferguson. That was based on the idea that the 14th and 15th Amendments to the Constitution and the Civil War had taken civil rights from white people, and they had to be restored. Well, it seems too much water under the bridge. They can't, or they will have at least a very difficult time attempting to reestablish a legal regime similar to what the Supreme Court ruled in 1896 in the Plessy v. Ferguson decision.
Robert Brown, 6115, asks, what is the way forward for African Americans under the Trump administration? And let me add, if Robert Brown, 6115, if you don't mind, let me add an additional to that question. And that is, when he puts it in the context of what's the way forward for African Americans, is it an ethnicity issue and a class issue? Is it a class issue? Where do we fit those pieces into the puzzle?
Well, in answering that question, I would begin with what you and I have talked about often, and that is the interregnum.
Mm-hmm.
We're in a period between a dying old system and a new system yet to be born. In this period, not only for African Americans, because we are not a separate, although we are a special and unique part of the US population, we're part of the nation, but we play a specific role, and that history validates that. I have said there's several options. One, the option of civil war. Now, what that will look like, certainly it's not going to look like 1861, 1865. It's not going to look like that.
Mm-hmm.
It will be something different. Some people say we're already in a cold civil war. The nation is so divided, it will not be brought back together unless there is a cataclysmic struggle, which is something like a civil war. Now, the country is so large, it will be different in the upper Midwest places like Minnesota and North and South Dakota. You know, they could gradually separate and establish what they would consider a liberated area. But at any rate, civil war is a possibility. The other possibility is a revolutionary democratic takeover of the state, just like the MAGA people are trying a capture of the state. Well, what if the people, and when I say the people, we're not talking about everybody,
Mm-hmm.
but we're talking about critical masses, move to seize state power in the name of a new democracy and of the people. Another option is the collapse of society, the ruin of all classes. And there's another one. What happens if let me just make this last point.
Explain that other one first.
What do you mean by last point?
Okay.
Because I think they all go together.
Okay.
The defection of enough elites that makes it almost impossible for the state to function competently, where people will not, where elites will no longer participate in the governance of the society as we know it. But I'm sorry, I interrupted.
No. I was just asking you to elaborate on that third point.
That is the collapse of society. Well, you know, all of the options, you know, of course, civil war, revolution, bring about a certain collapse,
Mm-hmm.
a certain undoing. But when a society reaches a moment of wide-scale chaos, where there is no resolution, there is no political direction, there are no forces strong enough to advance any program of social progress. That is when you have a ruin of all classes, a collapse of society, a stage of advanced ungovernability, etc. We have never experienced that. There are countries that have experienced that. For example, the period in China between 1928, more or less, and 1949, when the Chinese Revolution took place, was a period of the ruin of all classes and the rule of certain and separate parts of China by warlords. Russia, after the revolution of 1917, went into a civil war where large parts of the country ceased to be governable or governed. For example, Moscow and Petersburg, major cities, had governments. But you get further to the east and the south of Russia at that time, it was the collapse of society and much of it being ungovernable. In certain respects, after the defeat of Reconstruction in 1877, a counter-revolution took place, and good parts of the South ceased to be governed, and hence the Ku Klux Klan and white citizens councils and others came in and attempted to be a government. There was, for example, in South Carolina, a second civil war, where blacks and whites fought out whether or not a Reconstruction government and a constitutional regime giving black people due process and the right to vote would be established. I think that the period after the overturning of Reconstruction in many ways looked like the ruin of all classes. The South did not recover from that period until after the Civil Rights Movement. In other words, the Civil Rights Movement was of benefit to the South as a whole because industry then felt safe to invest in the South in ways that they had not, and on and on and on. So the collapse of government, the ruin of all classes, the chaos of society, in the ways that I'm talking about it, is one possibility. I would prefer a people's movement, something like the Civil Rights Movement, for democracy, for a new democracy that could, in fact, seize power, if not throughout the country, in the major centers of economic and political power, such as a city like Philadelphia, or perhaps Washington, certainly a city like Pittsburgh or Cleveland or Chicago.
As you look at Donald Trump federalizing the military and sending the National Guard into Los Angeles, looking what he's done in DC, arming them in DC, talking now about Chicago and Oakland and Baltimore. Do you see this as the, I call it the guinea pigization of the Black community of urban America, as the elites are planning for this pushback that you're talking about? Basically, a test run to declare martial law.
I know he wants to come close to that. Just like what he's doing with Venezuela, brinksmanship. There are substantial forces in this society who will push back against any attempt at martial law. It will not be easy.
Mm-hmm.
This is a huge country, and what might work in one place won't work everywhere.
And there are more guns than people.
That's the other thing. But more than that, I think the weapon of civil disobedience, non-cooperation,
mm-hmm.
in Washington, I think the mayor might have her hands tied, and she's come out and praised some things that Trump has done and said she opposes other things. But Washington is not Chicago. Washington is not Philadelphia.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Detroit.
huh?
Washington is not Detroit.
Yeah. We've never been a plantation.
Right.
You know, so, you know, in spite of everything, Trump is going slow at this. You know, during the 60s and the period of long hot summers from 64 to about 1970, the National Guard and the military regularly occupied cities in the summer. And I mean, really occupied them.
Mm-hmm.
What he's doing is kind of a drop in the bucket compared to that. So he's not the first one to declare a state of emergency in cities. And but he has enough sense to realize that he cannot just go in whole hog. There are reasons to believe that more than anything, he might be galvanizing a real opposition to his presidency and to his tactics. I don't think the trade union movement will take lightly his decertifying certain unions, government union workers, which is then a point of opposition. I think the Black community in Washington or any other big city has certain concerns about the fact that city administrations have not been able to protect them and their communities from random violence and so on. And we are very upset by that. I know in Philadelphia we are. So Black folk have said for some time, we've asked city government to declare a state of emergency in certain communities and do what has to be done to shut down this violence, these murders, and so on. But that having been said, I don't think Donald Trump's path ahead will be easy or predictable, that he will win in this one. I think there are opposition forces all over the place who will galvanize to oppose him. Now, but they must do it not based upon we now have to elect Democrats.
Mm-hmm.
I think we have to do something learned from New York. We have to elect people who are independent and have a program that will meet the needs of the people. Trump, I think, is now approaching his most vulnerable time in his political career, not just in this administration. And I think he will, and again predicting, he will act more erratically than he has in the past.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's acting more erratically in this second term than he did in the first term. He is politically unreliable. Even the Republicans in the House cannot rely upon him. He's erratic, and he seems to be very unstable. This means that he does not give a sense of confidence in what he's doing, and the people are losing, those who voted for him are losing confidence in him. That's the way I'm looking at it. But I put most of my what I believe a people's movement, a real people's movement must emerge. We can no longer, as Black folk, rely upon the Black political class, which we also call the Blackness leadership class. And we must come forward with a program and a strategy and tactics that begins at the grassroots and goes forward.
What about the internationalization of this conversation? Because we see in France, we see in Germany, we see in Italy, the rise of these of neoliberalism, and a lot of the similar social and economic tactics that have been employed here and that have been employed in other countries are being employed there. And so, is this people's movement a domestic movement, or is it going to also have to be internationalized?
Well, first of all, you can see in European countries such as France and Germany and Britain a real crisis of legitimacy, where Britain cannot keep a government in power for more than 6 or 8 months. It looks like the Macron government in France is on the cusp of collapsing. Europe is a hot mess, economically and politically. So it is already, as you put it, an internationalization, at least in the white nations, the more advanced capitalist nations. We see a pattern of opposition to whoever the elites who control the government are. That's across the board. On the other side, we see the rise of Asia. This weekend is not insignificant. It's very important. In China, there will be the meeting of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, 10 members and 10 affiliated or associate members who will attend that, including China, Russia, and India, North Korea, Iran, and so on. And then on the 3rd of September, there will be this celebration of the victory of the Chinese, World War II victory over Japan. And I mean, this is hugely important. First of all, the numbers of heads of state who are attending both events, constituting, when you add up the numbers, the majority of the human race. Europe
and who's not attending?
Pardon me?
And who is not attending?
Yeah, and who was not invited.
Right.
Not only are you not intended, you're not wanted here.
That's what I meant. Yes.
Yeah. No. So the sense of panic, the sense that the white world is losing. You have its reflection in this country with the quote revolutionary libertarian movement, and you mentioned Russell Vought is a big figure in this, but also those who are talking about let's go back to Plessy v. Ferguson. White people need civil rights. Let's make this a white nation again. Well, a white nation. How does that fly in Chicago? I know it doesn't sound too good here in Philadelphia, where the majority of people are not white. So they are trying to reverse history. They will not be successful. The question is, what do we do? Will a leadership come forward with a clear program of democratic struggle? That's what I would say. I know part of this is, are we on the cusp of fascism? I think such talk represents political and intellectual laziness.
Okay.
And fascism arose, or Nazism, the German form, arose in a Europe that was very different than this. But in countries, Germany or Italy or others of them, were not facing a crisis as comprehensive as the one that we are facing. Even with the rise of Hitler, the universities continued to function. The elite universities in the United States in the deepest crisis of their history.
Mm-hmm.
The University of Chicago, one of the great universities in this country, announced just this past week that they were putting a pause on all of the departments of the social and liberal arts, social science and human sciences. This is not insignificant, which means they put a pause on admitting students to their PhD programs. University of Chicago, this means a lot because it is primarily a graduate university. We see the crisis at Harvard, at Columbia, and such and so. So a crisis of the universities. Hitler is appointed to form a government and goes about establishing what he calls a third Reich, a third empire, which would unite the German people. And for a while he did.
Mm-hmm.
Trump is not uniting the American people. He cannot do as much as Hitler was doing because the people.
Mm-hmm.
You say, well, the people, who are the people? Yeah, you got enough white people who will go along with extreme measures. But when you put the entire people, the entire population of the United States together, Trump won an election, but Trump is not a person who can govern this country for long because he cannot win the trust and legitimacy of the population. That is the problem. Hitler and Mussolini did not have those problems. German nor Italian society faced such a comprehensive crisis as this. And when a crisis reaches the level of civilization, white or European civilization is in crisis. In part, that explains the panic of some of these thinkers and political activists. Listen to Steve Bannon more closely. He is very concerned about the future of American civilization. Have we lost it? Has American civilization already been lost? By which they always mean white civilization.
Mm-hmm.
I think it is almost lost. And I have ideas about that, the role of Black culture, the role of Black folk, who I think are the major force of social progress and social change in this society. And given the circumstances of the global containment of the American empire and the crisis of legitimacy, which is also a crisis of white people, this sharp divide among white people, the Black people play a role that goes far beyond our numbers. Do you think I'm too optimistic?
No, it's no, not at all. I think that I think it's inevitable. I think what you are, the question becomes, where is the tipping point? And there are a lot of folks that thought that we would be much further along in what you're articulating based upon what has transpired. When you look at Europe, you have to keep asking the question, why have the elite followed America down this rabbit hole and allowed for the decimation of their economies? And where are many would expect to see more people in the street, more protest at this phase of the game. So part of the question is, if not now, when? If not this, then what?
Yeah. Well, it's hard. I think we're looking at something of such magnitude that it's very difficult to put a timeline on this. When will this happen? When will another thing happen? And why has this or that not happened?
Right.
Yeah. But all of the conditions in terms of a people's movement are not in place. And as we talked, I think we talked before, a negative program is not a program.
Mm-hmm.
And people think that they have a program just by being against Trump. That does not win the people.
Correct.
You know, there has to be something that you stand for. And I think we have to realize, I mean, Trump and his followers, his government, are not in the strongest position.
Well, and to that point, Sean Moon, 7095 says, Trump has betrayed his own followers.
Yeah.
Those who believed Trump would somehow rebuild family wage employment now see him endlessly capitulate to Wall Street and big tech.
That's right.
And to that point, I have been saying, when you look at a lot of these Republican town halls and you hear these people saying, I didn't vote for this. What I interpret that as them saying, well, no, I voted for it, but I didn't think you were going to screw me. Mm-hmm. They're saying, I didn't think that you were going to hit my family. So yeah, y'all did vote for it because Trump was very clear in what he wanted to do. Y'all fell for it, and y'all voted for it, as Tom Porter loves to say. In the racism context, they much rather eat their racism than sit down and have a fine meal.
Yeah, see, and there are many things going on. I mean, first of all, inflation has not really come down that much for the average person.
Correct.
And we're looking at what could be a recession, which would put us in a situation of stagflation, inflation without economic growth. Already, over half of the country is either in poverty or close to it. Rents are out of control. Food is still unaffordable. Utility bills are just unbelievable, electric and water. And some people think that to fuel the artificial intelligence revolution, they're going to have to consume more electricity in states like New Jersey, driving the price of electricity up 40%. Of course, Mamdani won on a platform that said New York is unaffordable for the people. People are being driven out. I think, you know, it's kind of the beginning of something. Whiteness is not feeding people or paying the rent or paying the utility bills. Good jobs have not come back to the country. That's one of the things that Trump promised, to reindustrialize the country. He can't do it. So there is a sense of general unhappiness. As I was mentioning, the way protests will emerge in, let us say, the northern part of the Midwest, those places that people like you and I know very little about, such as Minnesota, such as North and South Dakota, Nebraska, Montana, they will respond differently than New Yorkers or Philadelphians. Still, I don't know how the South will respond. Cities like Jackson, Mississippi, or Birmingham, Alabama, or Atlanta, Georgia, these are very poor cities and getting poorer.
Right.
The problem of jobs, the problem of inflation, with this huge military budget and this huge sovereign debt, 37, soon to be 40 and 50 trillion dollars, which we the people cannot afford. And all of this is pretty much the price of empire, the price of war. I would say all of the objective conditions exist for a different movement, a new movement. I call it a democratic movement, a movement, democracy, demos, the rule of the people. When the Panthers said all power to the people, that was a democratic demand. We might wish to re-embrace that slogan. I think that the greatest theorist of democratic transition and transformation, the greatest two theorists in my mind, and you won't be surprised when I say this, are W.E.B. Du Bois and Martin Luther King Jr. Especially King's last book, Where do we go from here, Chaos or Community, where he said, in effect, that the question before the people is now the question of power. And the crisis then is nothing like the crisis now. We have never seen anything like this. And so, how the people will respond is another question. We don't know. But one thing we know, and I believe this, and I disagree with those who think that Trump is all powerful. He is not. He is not all powerful. His cadre, the people who are in his upper echelon, are, I think, intellectually and ideologically very weak, and they are panicking.
Yes. And as we get out, we can, I believe, see, you mentioned so many of the promises that he's made that he can't keep. And instead of substantive policy, what he does is attack the entities that are providing the data and the evidence of his failure. And so let's attack the Fed because I can't deal with interest rates. Let's attack the CDC and let's talk about non-scientific based solutions to problems because I don't have the solutions for them. And so, folks, pay very close attention as Donald Trump.
Can I just add one other thing?
Sure.
The person of Donald Trump. He seems to be unhinged and all over the place. He can't lead. He is
never has.
Well, the first term seemed to be more stable. He was more stable then.
But I think that was because he had more stable people around him.
Maybe. But I think in terms of who he is, in terms of what might be his own mental capacity.
Much worse now than it was then.
That's what I'm saying.
I'm with you. Dr. Anthony Monteiro, my dear brother, thank you so much as always. Greatly, greatly appreciate it. Look forward to having you back.
Thank you very much, Will.
Thank you all so much for listening to the Connecting the Dots podcast with me, Dr. Wilmer Leon. Stay tuned. New episode next week. Ajamu Baraka will be our guest on Monday. Follow us on social media. You can find all the links below in the show description. This is where the analysis of politics, culture, and history converge. Remember, talk without analysis is just chatter, and we don't chatter here on Connecting the Dots. See y'all next week. Have a wonderful, wonderful holiday. Until then, I am Dr. Wilmer Leon. Have a wonderful, blessed remainder of your day. Peace. I'm out.
Connecting the Dots with Dr. Wilmer Leon, where the analysis of politics, culture, and history converge.